Food has memory. My grandmother taught me that when I was barely tall enough to see over the kitchen counter. She would lift me onto a stool beside her and let me watch as she worked her magic, turning simple ingredients into dishes that could make grown men weep with nostalgia. Every recipe tells a story, she would say, her weathered hands moving with the confidence of decades. Every flavor carries the memory of someone who loved it. When you cook, you are not just feeding bodies. You are feeding souls. I believed her then. I believe her still. Nana Rosa passed away 1 year ago, leaving me her recipes, her kitchen, and a hole in my heart that no amount of cooking could fill. I turned her small catering business into my life's mission, determined to keep her memory alive through every dish I served. Rosa's kitchen became my sanctuary, my purpose, my connection to a woman who had raised me when my parents could not be bothered, but I never expected her recipes to lead me somewhere impossible. October in New York carries a particular kind of beauty. The leaves turn gold and crimson, the air grows crisp with the promise of winter, and the city seems to exhale after the relentless heat of summer. I was walking through Central Park on my day off, rare as those were, when I heard the crying, not the casual whimper of a tired child. This was something deeper. Desperate. The sound of a small soul in genuine distress. I followed it to a bench near the Bethesda fountain, where a little girl sat alone, tears streaming down her cheeks, her small body shaking with sobs that seemed too big for her tiny frame. She wore expensive clothes, a designer dress and patent leather shoes, but her face was the face of any child in pain. No adults nearby. No frantic parent pushing through the crowd. Just this small, devastated creature, crying as if her heart was breaking. I approached slowly, not wanting to frighten her. "Hey there, sweetheart. Are you okay?" She looked up at me with huge green eyes swimming in tears. 4 years old, maybe. Dark curly hair tangled around a face that would be beautiful if it were not twisted with misery. "I want my Nana," she sobbed. "I want my Nana, but she is gone and nobody makes it right anymore." Her accent was faintly Italian, the cadence of someone who had grown up hearing the language at home. It made my heart ache with recognition. "What do you mean, honey? What is not right?" "The food," she hiccuped, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "Nana used to make special food that made my tummy happy. But she went to heaven and now everything tastes wrong and I cannot eat and Papa gets angry and I just want my Nana back." I sank down onto the bench beside her, my heart breaking for this child who was mourning in the most fundamental way possible. Through hunger. Through the absence of comfort that only certain foods can provide. "I understand," I said softly. "I lost my Nana too. A year ago. And you are right, nothing tastes the same without them." She looked at me with sudden hope. "You had a Nana?" "A real Italian Nana who cooked. The best cook I ever knew. She taught me everything. Can you make the special food? The one that makes tummies happy?" "That depends. What special food are we talking about?" She scrunched up her face, trying to remember. "It is chicken. But not regular chicken. It is sauce that tastes like sunshine and herbs that smell like Nana's garden." She called it. She struggled with the words. "Pollo alla something." I cannot remember. My blood went cold. "Pollo alla Nana Rosa." Her eyes went wide. "Yes, that is it." "How did you know?" I could not answer. Could not explain that she had just named my grandmother's signature dish. The recipe that had made Rosa's kitchen famous. The dish I had cooked 1,000 times, never knowing where my grandmother had learned it. "Where did you hear that name?" I asked carefully. "Your Nana's name was Rosa?" "No, Nana Lucia. But that is what she called the chicken. Pollo alla Nana Rosa." She said it was from her best friend. From the old country. The world tilted beneath me. Nana Rosa. My grandmother. A best friend named Lucia. From the old country. "Sweetheart, what is your name?" "Valentina. But everyone calls me Tina." She sniffled. "What is your name?" "Gemma. Gemma Russo." "Russo." She tested the word. That sounds like an Italian name. It is. My grandmother was Rosa Russo. She was from Calabria. Tina's face transformed. Hope, wonder, disbelief all warring for dominance. Nonna Lucia was from Calabria too. She told me stories about a village in the mountains and a friend named Rosa who cooked the best chicken in the whole world. I felt tears prick at my eyes. My grandmother had never spoken of a friend named Lucia, had never explained where her recipes came from. She always said they were family secrets passed down through generations. I had assumed she meant her own family, but what if she meant a different kind of family? The family you choose? Tina, where is your papa? Does he know you are here alone? Her face crumpled again. Papa is in a meeting. The men in suits were supposed to watch me, but I ran away because I was hungry and nobody would give me the right food, and I thought maybe if I found a nunna in the park she could make it for me. Only the logic of a 4-year-old could make sense of that plan. You cannot run away from the people watching you. That is dangerous. Your papa must be very worried. Papa does not worry. Papa gets angry. Her lower lip trembled. He does not know how to be soft like Nana was. He tries, but it comes out wrong, and then I cry, and then he gets frustrated, and then we both feel bad. God, this child. This heartbreaking, perceptive child who understood more about her father's struggles than anyone should at her age. Let us find your papa, okay? And then maybe, if he says it is all right, I can come to your house sometime and cook you that special chicken. Would you like that? Her eyes went round as saucers. You can make it? Really? The real one? I can try. It was my Nana's recipe too, remember? She taught me everything she knew. Tina threw her arms around my neck, hugging me with the fierce desperation of a child who had finally found a lifeline. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You are magic. You are like a food angel sent from heaven. I laughed despite the strangeness of the situation, hugging her back. That was when I heard the footsteps. Heavy. Purposeful. The multiple sets converging on our location. Valentina. The voice was deep, commanding, edged with barely controlled panic. I looked up into the face of a man who could only be described as terrifying tall, broad-shouldered, a body built for violence wrapped in an expensive suit. Dark hair, sharp features, and eyes so intensely green they seemed to glow with inner fire. He was flanked by 4 men in black, all of them radiating danger like heat from a furnace. Papa! Tina released me but did not run to him. Instead, she grabbed my hand, anchoring herself to me. Papa, I found a food angel. Her name is Gemma, and her nana was Nana Rosa, and she can make this special chicken. The man's eyes snapped to mine. I watched him assess me in a single glance, cataloging everything from my worn jeans to my flour-dusted jacket to the face that probably showed every ounce of my confusion. What did you say? She can make the chicken, Papa. The one Nana Lucia used to make. Pollo alla Nana Rosa. She knows it because her nana taught her, and her nana was Nana Lucia's best friend from Italy. Color drained from his face. He stared at me like I had just risen from the grave. That is impossible. I assure you it is very possible. I stood, keeping Tina's hand in mine. My grandmother was Rosa Russo. She owned a catering business in Brooklyn. She died a year ago, but she taught me every recipe she knew, including the chicken your daughter is talking about. Rosa Russo. He repeated the name like it was a prayer. Or a curse. From Calabria. From the village of San Luca. Yes. She came to America in 1965. She never went back. He took a step toward me, then another, until he was close enough that I could see the pulse hammering in his throat. My mother's name was Lucia Ferraro. She grew up in San Luca. She always told me that her best friend, a girl named Rosa, had taught her to cook. That everything she knew came from Rosa's family recipes. My heart stopped. Your mother, she passed away. 15 years ago. Cancer. His voice cracked slightly. She was the only person who ever made me feel safe. The only person whose cooking tasted like home. When she died, that taste died with her. I have spent 15 years searching for someone who could recreate it. Hiring chefs, testing recipes, trying to find that exact flavor. And you never found it. Never. Until my daughter runs away in Central Park and finds a stranger who knows the recipe by name. His green eyes bore into mine. Who are you? How is this possible? I do not know. But I think our grandmothers kept secrets from both of us. Tina tugged at my hand. Does this mean you will come cook for us? Please, Gemma? Please? I am so hungry for the right food. I looked at this dangerous man, this child clinging to my hand, this impossible coincidence that felt more like fate. If your father agrees, I would be honored to try. Nico Ferraro studied me for a long moment. I could practically see the calculations happening behind his eyes. The risk assessment. The weighing of trust against desperation. Tomorrow, he said finally. Come to my home tomorrow evening. Cook for my daughter. And then you will tell me everything you know about your grandmother and her connection to my mother. That sounds like an order. It is a request. A desperate one. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. Please. Tina has not eaten properly in months. She refuses everything. If there is even a chance that you can reach her through food, he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Give me your address. I will be there at 5. He pulled out a card and handed it to me. Our fingers brushed, and I felt something electric pass between us. Something that had nothing to do with recipes or grandmothers or crying children in the park, something dangerous. Until tomorrow, Miss Russo. Until tomorrow, Mr. Ferraro. He gathered Tina into his arms, and she waved at me over his shoulder as they walked away, surrounded by men in black suits. Bye, food angel. See you tomorrow. Bring the magic chicken. I stood alone by the fountain, holding a business card that would change my life, Nico Ferraro. A name I did not know. A family connected to mine by secrets neither of us understood, and a little girl who was hungry for something more than food. I spent the entire night preparing not just the ingredients, though I gathered those with obsessive care. The exact chicken, the precise herbs, the specific tomatoes that Nana Rosa always insisted upon. I also prepared myself mentally, going through her old recipe journals, searching for any mention of a friend named Lucia that I found it near the back of the oldest journal, in handwriting so faded I had to use a magnifying glass to read it. Lucia's version of my mother's chicken. She adds more garlic, less wine. Her children will love it. I will teach her the original someday when she visits America. If she ever visits. She never did. According to Nico, Lucia had died in New York 15 years ago, which meant she had come to America at some point, had raised a family here, had died here. And my grandmother had never mentioned it. Why? What had happened between them? I arrived at the Ferraro estate at exactly 5 o'clock. Estate was the right word for it. A massive property on Staten Island, hidden behind walls and gates and enough security to protect a small nation. The house itself was Mediterranean style, all warm stone and terracotta tiles, surrounded by gardens that reminded me painfully of my grandmother's small backyard plot. Marco, the man I recognized from the park, met me at the door. Miss Russo. Mr. Ferraro is expecting you. Please follow me. He led me through the house, and I tried not to stare at the obvious wealth surrounding me. Original artwork on the walls. Furniture that probably cost more than my entire apartment. Crystal chandeliers casting soft light over marble floors, but scattered throughout were touches of warmth that softened the grandeur. Photographs in silver frames. Children's drawings taped to a hallway mirror. A pair of tiny pink shoes abandoned by the staircase. This was a home despite its size. A home where a little girl lived with a father who was clearly trying his best. The kitchen was enormous, professional grade, the kind of space I had always dreamed of working in. And waiting for me at the massive center island were Nico and Tina. Gemma. Tina flew off her stool and launched herself at my legs. You came. Papa said you might not come, but I knew you would because you are a food angel and food angels always keep their promises. I laughed, setting down my bags to properly hug her. Of course I came. I promised, did I not? She has been asking about you every hour, Nico said, a hint of exhaustion in his voice. I have never seen her this excited about anything. I am excited about the magic chicken, Tina announced. Can you make it now? Please? I am so hungry. You are always hungry lately, Nico muttered. Just not for anything we actually offer you. Because it is all wrong. Tina crossed her arms stubbornly. It does not taste like it is supposed to. Gemma's food will taste right. I know it will. I met Nico's eyes over his daughter's head. The desperation there was barely concealed. Let me get started. Tina, would you like to help me cook? Her face lit up like Christmas morning. Really? I can help? Papa never lets me help because he says the kitchen is dangerous. Kitchen can be dangerous, but it can also be magical. We will be very careful. I turned to Nico. If that is all right with you? He hesitated, clearly torn between his protective instincts and his desire to give his daughter something she wanted. Finally, he nodded. I will be right here if you need anything. Actually, I would prefer if you waited somewhere else. His eyebrows rose. Excuse me? Cooking is intimate. It requires focus and calm. Your energy right now is neither focused nor calm. I softened my words with a small smile. Give us an hour. I promise to return your daughter in one piece, probably covered in flour but happy. For a moment I thought he would refuse. He was clearly not a man accustomed to taking orders, especially not from strangers in his own home. But something in my expression must have convinced him because he nodded stiffly. 1 hour. The Marco will be outside if you need anything. He left, and I turned to Tina with a conspiratorial grin. Now, let us make some magic. Cooking with a 4-year-old is not efficient. There are constant questions. Endless requests to taste everything. Bills and messes and moments of distraction that required gentle redirection. But Tina was not just any 4-year-old. She was hungry for this experience in ways that went beyond food. Nana Lucia used to let me stir, she said, standing on a step stool beside me as I prepared the sauce. She said stirring was the most important job because it kept the love moving. Your Nana was very wise. Stirring does keep the love moving. It also keeps the sauce from burning. What else did your Nana teach you? Everything. I handed her a wooden spoon and guided her hand in slow circles through the simmering tomatoes. She taught me that food is not just fuel. It is connection, memory, a love in edible form. That is what Nana Lucia said too. Tina's voice grew small. I miss her so much. She was the only one who understood me. What do you mean? Mama did not understand. She always wanted me to be different than I am. Quieter. Neater. More like a doll than a person. Tina stirred carefully, her small face serious. And Papa loves me, but he does not know how to talk to me. He gets frustrated when I cry, and then I cry more because he is frustrated, and then everything is bad. My heart ached for this child. 4 years old and already so aware of the dysfunctions in her family. What about your mama? Where is she now? Gone. The word was flat. Final. She left 2 years ago. She said she did not want to be a mama anymore. She wanted to be free. I stopped stirring, shocked by the casual cruelty of that statement. She said that to you? No. I heard her say it to Papa. They were yelling and I was supposed to be asleep, but I was not. Tina's lower lip trembled. Do you think there is something wrong with me? Something that made her want to leave? I crouched down to her level, taking her small hands in mine. Listen to me very carefully, Valentina Ferraro. There is nothing wrong with you. Absolutely nothing. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that do not make sense. Sometimes they leave for reasons that have nothing to do with the people they are leaving behind. Your mother's choice was about her, not about you. Then why does it hurt so much? Because love is supposed to be forever, and when someone breaks that promise, it leaves a wound. I squeezed her hands gently. But wounds heal. And sometimes, when we are very lucky, new people come into our lives who help us heal faster. Like you. I smiled. Like me. And like the magic chicken. Speaking of which, we should finish cooking before your papa comes back and finds us crying into the sauce. She giggled, the shadow lifting from her face. That would make the sauce too salty. Exactly. Tears are terrible for seasoning. We returned to cooking, and slowly the kitchen filled with the aroma of my grandmother's signature dish. The scent of garlic and rosemary and slow-simmered tomatoes. The smell of home. When the dish was finally ready, I plated it carefully and called for Nico. He appeared immediately, clearly having been waiting just outside the door. His eyes went straight to his daughter, checking for damage, then to the plate in my hands, and then to my face with something that looked almost like fear. That smell, he said quietly. I have not smelled that in 15 years. Sit down. Both of you. It is time to eat. I served them at the kitchen island, watching anxiously as Tina picked up her fork. This was the moment of truth. Either my grandmother's recipe was what this child needed, or I had raised hopes I could not fulfill. Tina took a bite, her eyes closed. Her whole body seemed to relax, tension draining from her small shoulders like water from a sponge. It is right, she whispered. It is exactly right. It tastes like Nana Lucia's. Then she began to cry, not sad tears. Relief tears. Tears of someone who had been searching for something lost and had finally found it again. Nico was staring at his daughter with an expression of pure shock. Then he looked at his own plate, at the food he had not yet touched, and I saw his hands tremble. Eat, I said gently. It is okay. He lifted his fork. Took a bite. And I watched a grown man, a dangerous man, a man who probably made people disappear for a living, break down completely. The sob that escaped him was raw, guttural, the sound of 15 years of grief finally finding release. He dropped his fork and covered his face with his hands, shoulders shaking. Papa! Tina scrambled off her stool and ran to him, wrapping her small arms around his waist. Papa, do not cry. It is good crying, right? Because it tastes right? Tastes exactly like her, he managed, his voice wrecked. Exactly like my mother. How is that possible? How can you? He could not finish. Could not find words for the impossible thing I had done simply by following a recipe. I stood apart, giving them space, feeling like an intruder in a moment too intimate to witness. But when Nico looked up at me, his green eyes swimming with tears, I saw something beyond gratitude. I saw hope. Stay, he said, the word rough and raw. Please. Stay for dinner. Stay and tell me everything about your grandmother. I need to understand how this is possible. I should have made an excuse. Should have maintained professional distance. Should have remembered that this man was dangerous, that his world was violent, that getting involved with him could only lead to complications I did not need. Instead, I pulled out a chair and sat down. Tell me about your mother first. Tell me about Lucia. We talked for 3 hours. Tina fell asleep on the couch halfway through, her belly finally full, her face peaceful in a way Nico said he had not seen in months. He carried her to bed with a tenderness that seemed at odds with everything else about him, then returned to the kitchen where I waited. She has not slept that well since my mother died, he said, pouring 2 glasses of wine. She has not eaten properly since her mother left. Tonight you gave her both. The food gave her that. I just made it. Do not be modest. Whatever you did in that kitchen, it was not just cooking. He sat across from me, his eyes intent on my face. My mother used to say that the best cooks put their souls into the food, that you could taste love in every bite. I tasted love tonight. Your love for your grandmother. Her love for my mother. All of it in every bite. They must have been very close. Rosa and Lucia. I think they were more than close. I think they were like sisters. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos until he found what he was looking for. I had been going through old family albums. Look at this. He showed me a faded photograph. Two young women standing arm in arm in front of a rustic Italian kitchen. One was clearly his mother, young and beautiful with dark hair and laughing eyes. The other was my grandmother. I recognized her immediately, though she was decades younger than in any photo I had seen. That is them. Rosa and Lucia. Sometime in the early 60s before your grandmother left for America. They look so happy. They were. According to my aunt, they were inseparable. Best friends since childhood. They learned to cook together in my great-grandmother's kitchen. They shared everything, including recipes. Then why did my grandmother never mention her? Why did she tell me those recipes were family secrets when they were actually shared with your mother? I do not know. But I intend to find out. He leaned forward, his expression intense. My aunt is still alive. She is 91 and lives in a nursing home in Queens. She knew both of them. If anyone has answers, it is her. You want to visit her together? I want you to come with me. You are Rosa's granddaughter. You have as much right to this history as I do. He paused. And frankly, Tina will be devastated if you disappear now. She has already decided you are her food angel. She will not accept a substitute. I thought about my quiet life, my small business, the careful distance I maintained from anything complicated or dangerous. Then I thought about Tina's face when she tasted the chicken, about Nico's tears, about the mystery connecting our families across generations. When do we go? Tomorrow. If you are available. I will make myself available. He smiled then, the first real smile I had seen from him. It transformed his entire face, softening the harsh lines, making him look almost approachable, almost safe. Thank you, Gemma. For everything you did tonight. For my daughter. For me. Thank me after we find some answers. Right now I have more questions than I started with. Then we will find them together. He raised his glass. To Rosa and Lucia. Whatever their secrets, they brought us together. That has to mean something. I raised my glass to meet his. To Rosa and Lucia. And to Magic Chicken. He laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine and completely at odds with everything I knew about men like him. That I was in trouble, deep, complicated, delicious trouble, and I could not wait to see what happened next. The nursing home was nothing like I expected. That I had imagined something institutional, cold, the kind of place where families deposited their elderly and tried not to feel guilty. Instead, Nico pulled up to a building that looked more like a boutique hotel, all warm brick and flowering gardens and staff who greeted us by name. My aunt refused to go anywhere that smelled like death, Nico explained as we walked through the elegant lobby. Her words, not mine. So I found her a place that smelled like flowers and good coffee instead. You pay for this? She is the last of my mother's family. The only connection to Lucia I have left. His jaw tightened. I would pay anything to keep her comfortable. We found Aunt Carmela in a sunny room overlooking the gardens. She was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, with silver hair and dark eyes that held surprising sharpness for a woman of 91. When she saw Nico, her face lit up. Nico, you came. And you brought. She squinted at me, then went very still. Madonna mia. You look exactly like her. Like who, Zia? Rosa. Rosa Russo. Carmela's voice trembled. I thought I was seeing a ghost. I stepped forward, taking her offered hand. I am Gemma. Rosa's granddaughter. Her granddaughter. Tears filled the old woman's eyes. After all these years. Rosa's granddaughter, standing in my room. She turned to Nico. How did you find her? Tina found her, actually. In Central Park. Nico sat on the edge of his aunt's bed, his expression gentle in a way I had not seen before. Zia, we need to ask you about Rosa and my mother. About what happened between them. Carmela's face clouded. That is an old story. A painful one. We know they were close. We know they shared recipes. But Rosa never mentioned Lucia to her family, and Lucia never mentioned Rosa to us. Why? The old woman was quiet for a long moment, her gnarled fingers twisting in her lap. You must understand how things were back then. In the village. In those times. She took a shaky breath. Rosa and Lucia were not just friends. They were more than sisters. They were everything to each other. What does that mean? I asked softly. It means they loved each other. Truly loved each other. In a way that our village would never have accepted. Carmela met my eyes, her gaze steady despite the tears. They were young and foolish and thought they could hide it forever. But secrets do not stay hidden in small villages. The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the arm of my chair, trying to process what she was telling us. They were together? Romantically? They were soulmates. Two halves of the same heart. Carmela smiled sadly. I was the only one who knew. I caught them once, holding hands behind the church. They begged me not to tell. I never did. Nico's face had gone pale. If the village found out, they did find out. Eventually. Someone saw something, said something. The rumors started. Their families were horrified. Carmela shook her head. You cannot imagine the shame. The scandal. In 1965, in a Catholic village in Calabria, such things were unforgivable. So Rosa left, I said, understanding dawning. She went to America to escape. She had no choice. Her father gave her an ultimatum. Leave the village forever or be disowned completely. Lucia's family did the same. Tears were flowing freely now. They were forced apart, forbidden to contact each other, told that what they felt was sinful, shameful, wrong. But Lucia came to America eventually, Nico said. She married my father here. Yes, years later. After Rosa was already established in Brooklyn. After both of them had tried to live the lives their families demanded. Carmela's voice hardened. Lucia married because she was supposed to. 'Cause women of her generation had no other options. She did her duty. She raised children. She loved your father in her own way. But she never stopped loving Rosa. No. She never stopped. Carmela reached out, taking my hand in Nico's, joining us together. When Lucia came to America, they found each other again. Not as lovers. That part of their lives was over. But as friends. As the family they chose when their blood families rejected them. They saw each other. I was stunned. My grandmother saw Lucia every week. 4 years. They would cook together in Rosa's kitchen, sharing recipes, sharing memories, pretending they were just two old friends from the village. Carmela smiled through her tears. The recipes, you know, Gemma, the ones Rosa taught you. Many of them were created during those visits. Rosa and Lucia, cooking together, putting their love into food because they could not express it any other way. I thought about my grandmother's kitchen, about the joy she found in cooking, about the way she always said food was love made edible, that I had never understood what she meant. Now I did. Why did they never tell anyone? Nico's voice was rough. My mother could have shared this history. She could have told me about Rosa. She was ashamed. They both were. A lifetime of being told your love is sinful leaves scars that never fully heal. Carmela squeezed our hands. They made a pact. When they died, their secret would die with them. Their families would never know the truth. But you knew. I knew because I loved them both. Because I refused to let them carry that burden entirely alone. She looked at me with something like wonder. And now here you are, Rosa's granddaughter, cooking her recipes for Lucia's family, finding your way to each other despite every obstacle. It does feel like fate, I admitted. It is fate. It is Rosa and Lucia, reaching across death to bring their families together at last. Carmela released our hands, settling back against her pillows. They would be so happy seeing you two here. Seeing their secret finally understood. Seeing their love honored instead of hidden. Nico was silent, processing everything we had learned. I could see the emotions warring on his face. Shock. Grief. Something that looked almost like relief. "Thank you, Zia," he finally said. "Thank you for telling us. Thank you for asking. I have carried this story for 60 years, waiting for someone who would understand." She looked between us, a small smile playing at her lips. Take care of each other. Rosa and Lucia never had the chance to build a life together. But you do. Their love story ended in separation. Yours does not have to. Zia, we are not, Nico started. I am old, not blind. She waved a dismissive hand. I see the way you look at her. The way she looks at you. Do not waste time denying what is obvious to everyone except yourselves. My cheeks burned. I did not dare look at Nico. We should go, I said quickly. Let you rest. Yes, go. Go cook together. Go raise that beautiful little girl. Go live the life Rosa and Lucia deserved but never had. Carmela closed her eyes, suddenly exhausted. And come back to visit. Bring the child. I want to meet Lucia's great-granddaughter before I die. We left the nursing home in silence. The drive back to Staten Island felt endless, the weight of everything we had learned pressing down on both of us. I stared out the window, watching the city pass, trying to make sense of a history I had never imagined. My grandmother had loved a woman. Had been forced to hide that love, to deny it, to live a life that was not entirely her own. And yet she had found joy anyway. Had built a family. Had poured all that forbidden love into food and recipes and traditions she passed down to me. Are you all right? Nico's voice broke the silence. I do not know. I am still processing. I turned to look at him. Are you all right? I am relieved, actually. My mother always seemed sad, even when she was happy. Like she was carrying something heavy that she could never set down. Now I understand what it was. Hidden love. Denied identity. A lifetime of pretending. Yes. He was quiet for a moment. It makes me angry. That they had to live that way. That the world forced them apart. The world was different then. It is still not perfect, but it is better. Better is not good enough. Not when people I loved suffered because of other people's prejudice. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. I will not let Tina grow up in a world where she has to hide who she is. Whatever she becomes, whoever she loves, she will know she is accepted completely. That is all any child needs. Unconditional acceptance. Is it? He glanced at me. You seem to have turned out well, and from what you have told me, your childhood was not exactly ideal. My grandmother gave me unconditional acceptance. Everything else was just noise. We pulled through the gates of his estate, and I felt a strange reluctance to leave. This conversation, this moment of shared vulnerability. I did not want it to end. Come inside, Nico said, as if reading my thoughts. Tina will want to see you. And I believe there is still wine left from last night. I should probably go home. I have work tomorrow. 1 glass. Please. He turned off the engine but did not move to exit. I do not want to be alone with this information yet. I need someone to process it with. Someone who understands. I understand, I said softly. More than you know. We went inside together, and I did not leave until well after midnight. The weeks that followed blurred together in the best possible way. That I came to the Ferraro estate almost every day, ostensibly to cook for Tina, but really to become part of something I had not realized I was missing. A family. Chaotic and complicated and nothing like what I had imagined, but a family nonetheless. Tina blossomed under the attention. She ate everything I made, helped me in the kitchen with growing confidence, and slowly began to smile more than she cried. The sullen, hungry child I had found in Central Park transformed into a bright, curious girl who asked a million questions and demanded bedtime stories about magical chickens and food angels. And Nico was a revelation. The dangerous man I had first met softened in my presence, showing me glimpses of someone tender and thoughtful beneath the hard exterior. He joined us for dinner every night, trading his business suits for comfortable sweaters, learning to laugh at Tina's jokes even when they made no sense. Papa is different now, Tina told me one evening while we waited for him to come home. He smiles more. He does not get so angry. Maybe he is just happy, I suggested. Because of you. She nodded sagely. You are his food angel too. Not just mine. I did not correct her because she was right. 1 month after our visit to Carmela, everything changed. Tea was a Sunday evening, Tina's favorite time, because I always made something special for Sunday dinner. She had requested lasagna, my grandmother's recipe of course, and I had spent the afternoon layering pasta and sauce and cheese while she supervised from her step stool. More cheese, she instructed seriously. Lasagna needs lots and lots of cheese. If I add more cheese, it will be a cheese casserole, not lasagna. Cheese casserole sounds delicious. I laughed and added another handful of mozzarella. She was not wrong. Nico had been gone all day, handling business I did not ask about. I had learned quickly that there were parts of his life that existed in a separate compartment, a darkness I was not invited to examine. I was grateful for the boundary. It allowed me to pretend, at least sometimes, that this was a normal family living a normal life. He returned just as I was pulling the lasagna from the oven. Perfect timing, I said without turning around. Dinner is ready. It smells incredible. His voice was closer than I expected, and when I turned, he was right there, inches away. His eyes dark with something I could not name. Nico? Is everything okay? No. He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. Everything is not okay. Everything is very far from okay. My heart hammered. What happened? You happened. His hand lingered on my cheek. You walked into my life and turned everything upside down. You fed my daughter when no one else could reach her. You helped me understand my mother in ways I never imagined. You made this house feel like a home for the first time since Lucia died. Nico, I have been trying to maintain distance, trying to convince myself that you are just Tina's teacher, just a family friend, just someone who cooks for us. His thumb traced my cheekbone. But I cannot pretend anymore. I cannot look at you across the dinner table and act like I do not want you. I cannot watch you with my daughter and pretend I do not imagine you as part of our family permanently. What are you saying? I am saying that I have fallen in love with you, Gemma Russo. Against every rule I set for myself. Against every instinct that tells me to keep you at arm's length where you would be safe from my world. He stepped closer, his body almost touching mine. I am saying that I need to know if you feel the same. 'Cause if you do not, I will step back. I will pretend this conversation never happened. But if I do, then I am going to kiss you. And I am not going to stop until you tell me to. I should have thought about it. Should have considered the complications, the dangers, the thousand reasons why falling for a man like Nico Ferraro was a terrible idea. Instead, I closed the distance between us and kissed him first. He responded instantly, his arms wrapping around me, pulling me against his chest. Kiss was everything I had imagined and nothing I had prepared for. Hungry and tender at the same time. Desperate and patient. Like he was trying to memorize me with his mouth. Finally, a small voice said from the doorway. We broke apart to find Tina standing there, arms crossed, a satisfied expression on her face. I knew it, she announced. I told Marco that Papa was going to kiss Gemma and he said I was being silly, but I was right. I am always right about these things. You are supposed to be washing your hands for dinner, Nico said, but he was smiling. I was. But then I heard talking and I wanted to see if my prediction came true. She walked over to us, looking up with serious eyes. Does this mean Gemma is going to be my new mama? Question hung in the air. Heavy. Significant. That is a conversation for later, Nico said carefully. Right now we are just exploring. Exploring what? You already kissed her. That means you love her. And she kissed you back, so she loves you too. What else is there to explore? I laughed despite myself. She has a point. She is 4. She does not understand complications. Maybe 4-year-olds understand more than we give them credit for. I crouched down to Tina's level. I care about your papa very much. And I love you. But becoming a family is a big step. We need to take our time and make sure we do it right. Can you be patient with us? She considered this seriously. How patient? Like a day? Or like a whole week? Maybe a little longer than a week. That is very long. She sighed dramatically. But I suppose I can wait. As long as you keep making lasagna. Deal. She hugged me tightly, then ran off to wash her hands. Apparently satisfied that the adults had everything under control, Nico pulled me back into his arms. She is going to be impossible now, you realize. She will be planning our wedding before dessert. Would that be so terrible? He looked at me with an intensity that made my knees weak. No. It would not be terrible at all. The weeks that followed were a careful balance. Nico and I did not rush. We built our relationship brick by brick, learning each other through conversations and shared meals and quiet evenings after Tina was asleep. I learned that he read philosophy when he could not sleep. That he had wanted to be an architect before family obligation pulled him into the business. That he still visited his mother's grave every Sunday, rain or shine. He learned that I talked to my grandmother's photograph when I was stressed. That I dreamed of opening a restaurant someday. That I had never been in love before, not really, not like this. How is that possible? He asked one night, tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. We had finally crossed that line, 3 weeks after our first kiss, and I was still dizzy from the revelation of him. You are beautiful. Kind. Talented. Men must have been lining up. Men were interested in the idea of me. The Italian chef who could cook their mother's recipes and look good doing it. None of them were interested in the real me. Complications. The grief. The woman underneath the apron. Their loss. He kissed my shoulder. My gain. Very smooth. I have my moments. Tina adapted to the change with remarkable ease. She had been starving for a mother figure, and she adopted me with the same enthusiasm she had adopted the lasagna. I braided her hair. I taught her to cook. I read her bedtime stories and held her when she had nightmares about her real mother never coming back. I do not miss her anymore, she told me one night, her small voice muffled against my chest. Mama, I mean. Is that bad? No, sweetheart. It is not bad. It just means your heart is healing. It is healing because of you. You filled up the empty space. I held her tighter and tried not to cry. 3 months into our relationship, the danger found us. I had known abstractly that Nico's world was violent. That enemies existed beyond the walls of his estate. That the security surrounding us was not decorative. But knowing something and experiencing it are very different things. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when Marco burst through the door. We need to move. Now. What? Why? No time to explain. He grabbed my arm, pulling me away from the stove. Tina is already in the safe room. You need to be there too. Where is Nico? Handling it. Please, Miss Russo. We need to go. I let him lead me through the house to a door I had never noticed, hidden behind a bookshelf in Nico's study. Behind it was a reinforced room, all concrete and steel, equipped with supplies and monitors showing security feeds from around the property. Tina was already there, clutching her favorite stuffed animal, her face pale with fear. Gemma! She ran to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. The bad men are here. Marco said we have to hide. It is okay, baby. We are safe here. Your papa will take care of everything. I held her and watched the monitors, trying to make sense of the chaos outside. Men moving across the property. Gunfire. Shouts in Italian that I could not quite hear, and Nico in the center of it all, directing his people like a general on a battlefield that I had known what he was. Had accepted it intellectually. But seeing it, watching him command violence with cold efficiency, was different. This was the man I loved. This was the father of the child in my arms. This was reality, stripped of all the comfortable illusions I had built around it. The conflict lasted maybe 20 minutes. Felt like hours when the safe room door finally opened and Nico appeared, blood on his shirt and exhaustion in his eyes. I did not know what to feel. Relief. Fear. Something in between. It is over, he said. A rival family. They thought they could use you and Tina as leverage. His jaw tightened. They were wrong. Papa. Tina released me and ran to him. He caught her, lifting her into his arms, holding her close. I am here, Principessa. Everything is fine. The bad men are gone. Gemma was very brave. She did not cry at all. I am not surprised. Gemma is the bravest woman I know. He met my eyes over Tina's head, and I saw the question there. The fear. The desperate need to know if this had changed things. I crossed the room and wrapped my arms around both of them. We are okay, I said quietly. All of us. We are okay. He let out a breath I suspected he had been holding since the attack began. I was so scared, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. Not for myself. For you. For her. If anything had happened, nothing happened. Your people protected us. You protected us. This is my world, Gemma. This is what loving me means. Threats and violence and hiding in safe rooms while I deal with enemies who would hurt you just to get to me. I know. And you still want this? Want me? After seeing what I really am, I pulled back enough to look at his face. The blood. The weariness. The vulnerability he showed only to us. I want you, I said firmly. All of you. The danger and the darkness and the man who makes my daughter feel safe. I am not going anywhere. Your daughter. I realized what I had said. Felt the weight of it settle in my chest. Yes, my daughter. If that is okay. His answer was a kiss that tasted like relief and love and forever. More than okay, he murmured against my lips. More than anything I ever dared to hope for. The attack changed things, but not in the way I expected. Instead of pulling away, I moved closer. Instead of questioning my choices, I committed to them more fully. I had seen the worst of Nico's world and I had not run. That knowledge settled something inside both of us. I thought you would leave, Nico admitted one night weeks later. We were lying in his bed, the house quiet around us, Tina long asleep down the hall. When you saw the blood on my shirt, when you understood what I had done to protect you, I thought that would be the end. Did you want it to be? Part of me did. The part that believes I do not deserve happiness. That believes anyone who gets close to me will eventually be destroyed by my world. He turned to face me in the darkness. But a larger part of me was terrified. Because losing you would have broken me in ways I cannot recover from. You are not going to lose me. You cannot know that. Not with certainty. I know that I choose you. Every day. Whatever comes, I choose you. I traced the line of his jaw with my fingertip. That is all any of us can control. Choice to stay. The choice to love. Everything else is just noise. He kissed me then, slow and deep, and I felt the last of his walls come down. Spring arrived with flowers and new beginnings. Tina turned 5 in March. We threw her a party in the garden, complete with a princess cake I made myself and decorations she had spent weeks planning. She invited her entire preschool class, and for one perfect afternoon, the Ferraro estate was filled with the shrieks and laughter of children. She has never had a real birthday party before, Nico told me, watching his daughter chase her friends through the garden. Elena always said parties were too much trouble. Too messy. Too loud. Parties should be messy and loud. That is the whole point. I am beginning to understand that. He slipped his arm around my waist. I am beginning to understand a lot of things I missed before. After the guests left and Tina had crashed from her sugar high, we sat together on the terrace watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. I have something for you, Nico said, reaching into his pocket. I was going to wait for a more romantic moment. A fancy dinner. Trip somewhere beautiful. But watching you today, covered in frosting and laughing with the children, I realized that this is the romantic moment. This ordinary, messy, perfect life we are building. He pulled out a ring box and my heart stopped. Gemma Russo, you walked into my life because my daughter got lost in a park. You stayed because you are stubborn and kind and incapable of walking away from people who need you. He opened the box, revealing a ring that took my breath away. A vintage setting, Art Deco style, with a central diamond surrounded by smaller sapphires. This was my mother's ring. My father gave it to her on their wedding day. It is the only piece of jewelry she truly loved. Nico, I know my world is dangerous. I know loving me comes with risks that no sane person would accept. But I am asking anyway. I am asking because I cannot imagine my life without you. Because Tina needs you. Because I need you. His voice cracked slightly. Will you marry me? Will you become my wife, my partner, my family? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you? I did not have to think. Did not need to weigh pros and cons or consider consequences. The answer had been decided the moment I first tasted my grandmother's recipe on his daughter's lips. Yes. I pulled him into a kiss. Yes, absolutely yes. He slid the ring onto my finger and it fit perfectly. Like it had been waiting for me all along. We should tell Tina, I said when we finally broke apart. She already knows. She helped me pick the ring. She what? I asked her permission first. She is the most important person in my life, after all. If she had said no, I would not have proposed. What did she say? He smiled. She said it was about time. Then she informed me that the ring needed to have blue stones because blue is your favorite color. I looked down at the sapphires sparkling in the fading light. She was paying attention. She pays attention to everything about you. She loves you, Gemma. As much as I do. Maybe more. Not possible. No. He kissed my forehead. Not possible. We married in June. The ceremony was held in the garden where Tina had celebrated her birthday, transformed by flowers and fairy lights into something out of a fairy tale. I wore a simple white dress, my grandmother's pearls around my neck, my heart so full I thought it might burst. Tina served as flower girl, taking her responsibilities so seriously that she corrected 2 guests who tried to sit on the wrong side of the aisle. She wore a miniature version of my dress, her dark curls crowned with a wreath of baby roses. You look like a princess, she told me before the ceremony, her green eyes wide with wonder. A real princess. Like in the stories. You are the princess, baby. I am just the cook. No. She shook her head firmly. You are the queen. Queens are better than princesses because they get to be in charge and they make the rules and they take care of everyone. I crouched down to her level. And what does that make you? Your helper. The princess who helps the queen make everything good. That is the best job in the whole kingdom. She beamed and took my hand, leading me down the aisle toward her father. The ceremony was short but meaningful. We had written our own vows, struggling for weeks to find words big enough for what we felt. I vow to love you in the kitchen and out of it, I said, my voice trembling. To feed your body with food and your soul with love. To be the mother Tina deserves and the wife you need. To stand beside you through danger and peace, through joy and sorrow, through everything life throws at us. I vow to protect you with everything I have, Nico replied. To be the man you see in me, even when I cannot see him in myself. To build a family with you that Rosa and Lucia would be proud of. To love you fiercely and completely for every day I have left on this earth. We exchanged rings. We exchanged a kiss that made Tina giggle and the guests applaud, and when the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, Tina threw herself between us, demanding to be included in the embrace. We are a real family now, she declared. Forever and ever. Forever and ever, we agreed that night after the guests had departed and Tina had finally succumbed to exhaustion. Nico and I stood in the kitchen, our kitchen now. The heart of our home. Cook something for me, he said, leaning against the counter. Anything. I just want to watch you. On our wedding night? Especially on our wedding night. This is where we began. This is where you brought us back to life. I cannot think of a better way to start our marriage. So I cooked nothing fancy. Just a simple pasta with garlic and olive oil, the way my grandmother had taught me. The way Lucia had taught her. The way generations of women had fed their families, putting love into every bite. Nico watched me work, his eyes soft with emotion. My mother used to say that cooking was prayer, he said quietly. That every meal was an offering to the people you loved. My grandmother said the same thing. 'Cause they learned it together. Because their love became the recipes we carry. He moved closer, wrapping his arms around me from behind as I stirred. We are their legacy, Gemma. Everything they could not have, everything they dreamed of but never achieved. We are living their happy ending. Then we should make it count. We will. Kissed my neck. Every day for the rest of our lives. I finished the pasta. We ate it at the kitchen counter, feeding each other bites, laughing at the absurdity of a formal wedding followed by midnight pasta in our pajamas, but that was us. That was our family. Fancy when necessary, simple when possible, always centered around food and love and the legacy of two women who had found each other against all odds. Rosa and Lucia never got their happy ending, but their granddaughter and great-grandson did, and that would have to be enough. 2 years later, the restaurant stood on a corner in Brooklyn, just 3 blocks from where my grandmother had run her tiny catering kitchen for 40 years. The sign above the door read Rosa and Amp, Lucia's an elegant script, and every time I walked through that door, I felt their presence surrounding me. It had been Nico's idea. You are wasting your talent cooking for just our family, he had said one night over dinner. The world deserves to taste what you can create. I have the catering business. That is enough. It is not enough. It is a fraction of what you could do. He had taken my hand across the table. Open a restaurant. Name it after them. Let their legacy feed the world instead of being hidden away. So I did Rosa and Amp. Lucia's opened in the spring, a year after our wedding. The menu was built on my grandmother's recipes, enhanced by the dishes I had created during my time with Nico and Tina. Every item told a story. Every flavor carried memory. The critics loved it. Public loved it more. Within 6 months, we had a waiting list 3 weeks long and offers from investors who wanted to franchise the concept. I turned them all down. This is not about money, I told Nico when he questioned my decision. This is about legacy. About honoring 2 women who never got to share their love openly. I will not turn that into a corporate brand. I am not suggesting you do. But you could open another location. Train other chefs. Spread their story further. Maybe someday. When I find chefs who understand what this food means. He smiled and kissed me. You will find them. You find everyone who needs to be found. It is your gift. Tina turned 7 that summer. She was no longer the frightened, hungry child I had found crying in Central Park. She had grown tall and confident, with opinions about everything and a laugh that could fill any room. She still helped me in the kitchen every chance she got, standing on her step stool, stirring sauces and tasting everything with the critical eye of a born chef. I am going to take over the restaurant when I grow up, she announced one evening while we prepared Sunday dinner together. Papa can handle the business stuff, but I will be the head chef. Like you, Mama. Mama. She had started calling me that the day after our wedding, and the words still made my heart swell every time I heard it. You can be anything you want, baby. Chef, doctor, astronaut. The world is yours. I want to be a chef. I want to make food that makes people cry happy tears like Papa did when he first tasted your chicken. She paused, considering. Do you think Nana Rosa and Nana Lucia would be proud of me? I think they would be incredibly proud. Of all of us. I wish I could have met them. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. That night, after Tina was asleep and Nico was finishing some work in his study, I sat alone in the kitchen looking at the photograph I kept on the windowsill. Rosa and Lucia, young and beautiful, standing arm in arm with their whole lives ahead of them. I hope you can see this, I whispered to them. I hope you know that your love was not wasted, that it grew and changed and became something beautiful, that we are carrying it forward generation by generation. The photograph did not answer, but I felt something anyway. A warmth, presence, the sense that somewhere, somehow, they were watching and they were smiling. The news came on a Tuesday morning. Nico found me in the restaurant kitchen, prepping for the lunch service, and one look at his face told me something was wrong. It is Carmela, he said quietly. The nursing home called. She does not have much time left. We closed the restaurant for the day and drove to Queens as fast as traffic would allow. Tina sat in the back seat, unusually quiet, understanding somehow that this was serious. Carmela was tiny in her hospital bed, shrunk into almost nothing, but her eyes were clear when we entered. You came, she whispered. All 3 of you. Good. I wanted to see the family together one last time. Zia, you should rest. Nico took her hand gently. Save your strength. For what? I am 93 years old. I have no strength left to save. She smiled weakly. Besides, I have been waiting for this. Waiting to tell you something before I go. Tell us what? I spoke to them last night. Rosa and Lucia. In my dreams, her eyes drifted to something we could not see. They were young again. Beautiful. Holding hands the way they used to when they thought no one was looking. They asked me to give you a message. I moved closer, my heart pounding. What message? They said thank you. Thank you for finding each other. Thank you for giving their love a home to live in. Thank you for naming the restaurant after them, for cooking their recipes, for telling their story to anyone who would listen. Tears slid down her weathered cheeks. They said they are finally at peace. That watching your family grow has healed something that has been broken for 60 years. I could not speak. Could not find words through the tears streaming down my own face. And they said one more thing. Carmela's eyes found Tina standing quietly by the door. They said to tell the little one that she carries their gift, that she will be the greatest cook of all of them someday, that the love they planted will bloom brightest in her. Tina stepped forward, her small face serious. I will, Zia Carmela. I promise I will make them proud. You already do, child. You already do. Carmela died that evening, peaceful and smiling, surrounded by the family she had helped create. We buried her next to Lucia, in the plot Nico had purchased years ago. The gravestone read, Carmela Ferraro, keeper of stories, guardian of love. It was exactly right. 6 months later, I discovered I was pregnant. The morning sickness hit me during a busy Saturday brunch service, and I barely made it to the bathroom before losing everything I had eaten. One of my sous chefs found me there, pale and shaking, and immediately sent me home. Nico was frantic when I walked through the door. What is wrong? The restaurant called. They said you were sick. Should I call a doctor? I need you to sit down. He sat, his face pale with worry. I am not sick, I said, taking his hands in mine. I am pregnant. For a long moment, he did not react. Just sat there, staring at me, his expression frozen, then he burst into tears. Nico? I had never seen him cry like this, not even at Carmela's funeral. Nico, are you okay? Okay. He pulled me into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. I am more than okay. I am. I do not have words. You are giving me another child. After everything. Through all the years I thought I would never have this. You are giving me a family I never dared to dream of. We are giving each other a family. That is how this works. He kissed me, deep and full of joy, and I felt something settle into place. The final piece of a puzzle I had not known was incomplete. Tina was equally ecstatic when we told her. A baby. She bounced around the living room like she had been given a lifetime supply of sugar. I am going to be a big sister. I am going to teach the baby everything. How to cook and how to read and how to play and how to be the best person in the whole world. That is a lot of responsibility, Nico said, trying to hide his smile. I can handle it. I have been practicing with my dolls. She stopped bouncing, suddenly serious. Will the baby call Mama Mama too? Or will I have to share? I knelt down to her level. You will share. But sharing does not mean having less. It means having more. More love. More family. More people to make food for. She considered this carefully. More people to appreciate my cooking. Exactly. Okay. I accept these terms. Nico burst out laughing, and I pulled Tina into a hug that quickly became a group embrace. Our family was growing. Our love was expanding. Everything Rosa and Lucia had dreamed of was coming true. The baby arrived in March, on a day that could not have been more perfect. A boy. 7 pounds, 8 ounces, with his father's dark hair and my grandmother's eyes. We named him Marco Enzo Ferraro. Marco for the man who had helped save our lives during the attack, Enzo for Nico's father, but his middle name, the one we used at home, was different. We should call him something that honors them, Nico had suggested during my pregnancy. Rosa and Lucia. They brought us together. Our son should carry their legacy. What do you suggest? Rosario. It is a boy's name derived from Rosa, and it means rosary, which feels right. A chain of prayers. A connection between generations. So Marco became Rosario at home. Our little prayer. Our living legacy. Tina was the best big sister anyone could have asked for. She helped with feedings, with diaper changes, with the endless tasks that came with a newborn. She sang him lullabies in Italian that I had taught her. She told him stories about magical chickens and food angels. He is going to be a chef too, she announced one evening, watching him sleep in his crib. I can tell. He has cooking hands. He is 3 weeks old. He does not have anything yet. I know what I know, Mama. Trust me. I smiled and kissed her forehead. I always do, baby. I always do. 1 year later, we traveled to Italy, not just anywhere in Italy. To Calabria. To San Luca. To the village where Rosa and Lucia had grown up, had fallen in love, had been torn apart. It was smaller than I had imagined. A handful of houses clinging to a mountainside, surrounded by olive groves and lemon trees. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where secrets could not stay hidden for long. That we found the house where they had lived. A crumbling stone building, abandoned for decades but still standing. Still holding the memories of 2 girls who had loved each other in a world that would not let them. This is where it all began, Nico said, his arm around my shoulders. Tina held Rosario, pointing out butterflies to him even though he was too young to understand. This is where our story started 60 years before we were born. It is beautiful, I said, and sad, and perfect. We placed flowers on the doorstep. Roses and lilies intertwined. Rosa and Lucia together at last. I forgive you, I whispered to the village, to the people who had driven them apart. I forgive you because holding on to anger would only hurt us. And Rosa and Lucia would not want that. They would want us to be free. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of lemons and rosemary. Felt like an answer. Like a blessing, like peace. That night in our hotel room after the children were asleep, Nico and I stood on the balcony watching the stars. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For everything. For finding Tina in the park. For staying when you should have run. For loving me despite every reason not to. For giving me a family I never knew I needed. You gave me the same things. Then we are even. We are more than even. We are complete. He pulled me close and we stood there in silence, two people who had found each other because two women 60 years ago had loved each other too much to ever truly let go. Some love stories end in tragedy, but some love stories become recipes, and recipes become legacies, and legacies become families that carry the love forward, generation after generation, bite after bite, meal after meal. Rosa and Lucia never got their happy ending, but we did, and every time I cook, every time I feed my family, every time I watch my daughter stir a sauce or my son reach for a spoon, I feel them with me. Point two women who loved each other. Point two women whose love became food. Point two women whose food became us. That is the real magic, not in the recipes, die in the love that created them and in the families brave enough to carry that love forward forever. Thank you so much for joining me for this story. For giving me a family I never knew I needed. You gave me the same things. Then we are even. We are more than even. If you enjoyed, she calmed his crying daughter with a recipe. Please do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more thrilling stories. Your comments mean the world to me. Let me know what you thought and what kind of stories you would like to see next. Until next time, keep reading and stay mysterious.